The snow came early that year, thick, white, and cruel, swallowing the open plains like a ghostly tide. Jack Hollister wasn't supposed to be out that night, but sometimes a man runs farther from himself than from the storm. His horse stumbled through the drifts, breath steaming in the dark, as the wind screamed through the pines. When the lantern went out, Jack knew he wouldn't last an hour. Then, through the blur of snow, he saw a flicker, a firelight, small but steady. He followed it like a dying prayer, and it led him to a shack half buried in frost. He pushed the door open and froze. Inside, the warmth hit him first, then the sight of her. A young woman wrapped in furs, crouched beside a fire, bow drawn. Her eyes were dark as coal and twice as sharp. "You step one closer, stranger, and you'll meet my arrow," she warned. Jack lifted his hands, voice rough with cold. "Ain't here for trouble, ma'am. Just need warmth. Storm's got my horse half dead." For a long moment, she said nothing, then lowered the bow. "You can stay till dawn," she said softly. "After that, we'll see what the spirits say." He dropped by the fire, shaking from cold. The heat bit into his skin like life itself returning. She handed him a cup of something warm, bitter tea, maybe, and sat across from him. "You live out here alone?" he asked. She nodded. "My people move with the seasons. I stayed behind." Her voice carried both strength and sorrow. "Name's Alara." He nodded back. "Jack Hollister. Ranch hand out of Dry Creek, or was, till the boss decided winter don't need extra hands." She smiled faintly. "So now you belong to the snow." Hours passed with the wind howling outside, the world shrinking to the crackle of fire, and the sound of two hearts thawing. She told him her tribe believed every storm carried the breath of ancestors, that if you found shelter during the blizzard, it wasn't luck, it was calling. Jack laughed softly. "Then your spirits picked the wrong fool." But she didn't smile. "They never pick wrong." There was something in her tone, calm, certain, that made the fire seem almost holy. Later, when the roof creaked and snow pressed heavy against the walls, she rose. "The spirits are restless," she whispered. "They don't like strangers dying in their sight." She took a small clay bowl, mixed herbs and ash, and murmured words Jack didn't understand. He watched, feeling something shift in the air, not fear, but weight. She turned to him then, eyes glimmering with the firelight. "You must share the shelter, the warmth, and the silence until dawn," she said. "That's how the spirits know you live." He nodded, pulling the blanket tighter. "Fine by me." She lay near the fire, facing away, her breath soft in the flickering glow. Outside, the storm raged harder, but inside there was peace, deep, fragile, almost sacred. Jack closed his eyes, thinking he'd found mercy in a woman's kindness. He didn't know that in her world, mercy was more than a gift, it was a vow. When dawn finally broke, pale and cold, Alara rose and faced him with solemn eyes. "You'll need to go soon," she said. "But know this, you are not a stranger anymore." He didn't understand until he stepped outside. The snow had stopped, and the air was still, like the land itself held its breath. She followed him to the edge of the clearing, her fur cloak trailing in the snow. "Last night the spirits bore witness," she said quietly. "By our law, we shared life. That binds us." Jack frowned. "Binds us? How?" Her gaze didn't waver. "You are my mate now, by sacred law." He stared at her, half in disbelief, half in awe. "I didn't agree to no such thing." She smiled faintly. "The spirits don't ask, Jack. They decide." He laughed, shaking his head, but something inside him stirred, a strange sense that she wasn't wrong. Maybe it was the storm, or the fire, or the way her eyes held the sunrise, but he couldn't bring himself to ride away. "And if I don't believe in your law?" he asked. "Then you'll learn what happens when a man tries to outrun fate," she said softly. "Because no one ever has." As he mounted his horse, the cold returned sharper than before. He looked back once. She stood in the snow, still and silent, a figure carved from the land itself. Jack rode off, but even miles later, he could still feel her eyes on his back, and the warmth of that shelter in his bones. Something had changed in him, something old and unspoken, as if the storm had marked him. He didn't know it yet, but Dust Creek would soon whisper a new story, about a man who went into the snow a wanderer and came back bound by sacred law. When Jack rode back into Dry Creek, the town was half buried under snow. The saloon porch sagged under frost, and smoke from the chimneys drifted like thin prayers into the pale sky. He tied up his horse and stepped inside, boots crunching ice, heart still heavy with the strange words she'd spoken. Men laughed around the stove, whiskey in hand, the piano silent because no one dared play in weather like this. When they saw him, someone called out, "Well, I'll be." Thought the blizzard took you, Hollister. Jack forced a grin. Almost did. Found a shack in the woods. Saved my hide. A rancher slapped his back. Reckon you owe that shack a thank you. Jack nodded, but his smile faded. He did owe it something, or someone. The warmth of that night still lingered in his bones, the sound of her voice echoing when the world went quiet. She had said the spirits had bound them, but that was just mountain talk, wasn't it? He'd heard stories before. Ghost wives, spirit oaths, mountain folk who believed the wind carried law older than man. Yet every time he tried to dismiss it, a part of him couldn't. Something inside him wouldn't let go. That night, he lay awake in the boarding house, staring at the ceiling. The wind outside had calmed, but his heart hadn't. He dreamed of firelight and the sound of snow cracking underfoot, of eyes dark and deep as the storm itself. When he woke, sweat cold on his brow, he could almost smell the herb she burned. He muttered, "Just a dream." But the words felt thin. And then came the knock. 3 soft raps, like the brush of wind against wood. He opened the door to nothing but white silence, until he looked down. On the step lay a feather, black as coal, and a strip of leather tied in a knot. The old woman who ran the house gasped when she saw it. "You've been claimed," she whispered, crossing herself though she wasn't Indian. "That's binding sign of the northern tribes. Means you belong to a spirit wife." Jack tried to laugh it off. "A spirit wife? Come on, that's superstition." But her face stayed grave. "Superstition keeps men alive out here. I'd sleep light if I were you." Jack tossed the feather aside, but his hands shook. Days passed. The snow melted into brown rivers of mud, and ranch work called him back. But wherever he went, strange things followed. His horse refused to ride north, where the forest began. Coyotes came too close at night, howling low and mournful near the fence. Once, while fixing a broken post, he found the same knot of leather tied around the rail. He couldn't explain it, but deep down, he felt watched, not in fear, but in presence. And though he never admitted, he missed her. Missed the way the silence around her wasn't empty, how her eyes had seen straight through him. One afternoon, he rode out to the ridge to check the herd. The plains were golden under the winter sun, bright and still. He dismounted to rest his horse, when a shadow moved by the trees. A figure stepped out, tall, wrapped in furs. For a heartbeat, he thought he was dreaming again. "Ilara?" he breathed. She smiled, that same quiet, haunting smile. "You left before the dawn's word was done," she said softly. "The bond was sealed, but the promise was not." Jack frowned, heart thudding. "What promise?" She walked closer, her breath white in the cold air. "To walk beside me when the seasons change. You were marked by the spirits, Jack Hollister. You are of my blood now." He stepped back, shaking his head. "I ain't part of any tribe, and I sure ain't part of any spirit's deal." Her gaze didn't falter. "Then why do you dream of me? Why does your fire burn cold when you curse my name?" The words hit too close. He wanted to deny them, but couldn't. "What do you want from me?" he asked quietly. She looked toward the horizon. "The spirits gave us to each other, but a gift unhonored becomes a curse." That night, when he returned to town, his reflection in the window startled him. He looked older, worn, like the storm had never ended. He poured whiskey, but it tasted like ash. The saloon lights blurred, the laughter distant. And then he heard her voice, soft, like the wind at his ear. "Don't run, Jack." He spun, but no one was there. Panic clawed at him. Maybe he was losing his mind. He stumbled into the cold street, breath clouding. The feather he'd thrown away now lay on the ground before him. He knelt slowly, the world spinning around him. The sound of drums echoed faintly from the hills, low, rhythmic, alive. He could almost see figures moving beyond the fog, torches swaying in slow, solemn circles. And in the center stood Ilara, eyes glowing with the firelight of something not entirely human, not entirely mortal. Her voice carried across the distance, soft but powerful. "A man's heart may wander, but his soul remembers." Jack rose, heart hammering. He realized then that maybe she wasn't bound by his world's laws at all. Maybe it was he who'd walked into hers. And maybe, just maybe, that night in the storm had written something neither could undo. When dawn came again, he stood outside town, staring north toward the forest where the snow still lingered. The wind whispered through the pines, and this time, it didn't sound like cold. It sounded like calling.